Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simon Timpley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. I'd like to welcome you to edition 44 of the Food Safety Fridays webinar program. We've got a great crowd today. We've got over 1,100 people registered for today, so we're looking for a very good webinar. And we also have a very good speaker. Previous speaker, David Rosenblatt, Director of Training and Veterinary Consultant at Share Consulting and Training. Today, David's going to be talking about, well, the subject is how ISO 9001 can improve your food safety management. The latest version of ISO 9001 was released in the fall of 2015, and it has some new approaches to managing quality that can be integrated with the organization's food safety management system more effectively. So David today is going to be telling us somewhat about the major changes in the standard and also how we might take advantage of them to benefit our food safety management system. So looking forward to that. And it follows on from last week. We learned with Yasser Mohammed last week about the history of quality with all the gurus through the ages and learning about the evolution of quality. So now we're looking at quality going forward, how it can take us forward into this century. I'd like to thank the sponsors, Safe Food 360, Trace Analytics, FSSC 22000 and Metla Toledo, who support this program and help to bring these webinars free to you every week and get you free education and a free certificate of attendance. And also, importantly, the most important people are the presenters. So we're very pleased to have David with us today. Welcome, David.
Hello.
Looking forward to your presentation today. It's nice to have you back. Okay. I will, now I've just shown your face to the audience, I'll let you get your presentation ready while I talk about next week's webinar. So I'll see you shortly, David. Okay, you should see in the sidebar an image, Jennifer, and Jennifer's webinar is on April the 8th. We're having a 2-week break after today while I go to Spain for a bit of sun. Anyway, in a couple of weeks, Jennifer's going to be talking about managing unannounced audits under the GFSI standards. Sorry for missing the D and the S off there, but if you click that register now button, that will open a new window and you can register right here and now for that webinar. Obviously, unannounced audits are growing. They're optional in a lot of cases, but eventually they may well become mandatory. So let's get prepared 24/7, 365. Let's be audit ready. And Jennifer's going to be giving us some tips and ideas how we can be prepared. Right, I can see David's ready. We've got some polls today. We'll have some Q&A after, but for now, I'll hand you over to David. Okay.
Okay, am I on?
Yep.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? If there's any sound problems, just type that in. We'll see what we can do. And before I get on with my presentation, I want to welcome everybody and thank you, Simon, for having me again. It's a nice way to spend a Friday afternoon here. And I'd like to just ask the participants, how many people do we have in, Simon?
We have 240 something at the moment.
Okay, I'd just like you to type into your sidebar if you are currently working with an organization that is certified to ISO 9001. Just a yes or a no, so I can get a feeling.
Okay, yep, just type in yes or no in the sidebar, whether you're working with ISO 9001. Some people are saying that the volume is a bit low. Don't know if you can do anything, David, to either move the microphone closer to you.
I'll speak up. How's that?
Or speak up. I mean, I can hear you fine. If you attendees, turn your volume up higher as well. That might help. Right. In terms of the question, I'll do a sort of quick recce through here, and I can see, I would say about 60-40 yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can. So that's what more or less what I was expecting. Um, and for the 40% who are not certified, I do recommend obtaining certification for ISO 9001. It's a very, very uh, intelligent standard, especially the 2015 version. Even if you are not required to, it will boost your business, I promise, if it's done properly. Um, now, this talk on ISO 9001 is not the most interesting in the world. Last time I gave a lecture on this, this is what happened. So just to try to stay awake. I know learning about standards is not the most interesting thing in the world, but we have to get through with it. So I will try to put in some jokes every once in a while to keep you awake. So here's a quality joke that I found um, online. Um, it's about a quality management system. This is also Simon. When you go to Spain, you want to be careful what you eat. Okay.
I'm just reading it. Hey, these are yeah, okay. That's customer service.
Um, okay. So just I want to take you through ISO management systems for industry. Just a little bit of history. So you did talk a little bit last week about history for quality management systems. We're going to speed up until the year 2000, and that's when ISO published its brand new ISO 9001 standard. This is quality management system for all organizations. The the transformation from the previous ISO version, which if I remember correctly, was 1994, to 2000 was substantial, and everybody was very excited about that. And about a million organizations around the world went on to be certified um, to ISO 9001 2000. We still having sound problems, Simon? What are people saying there?
You carry on, David. Everything's fine. I'm just doing some tests here myself.
Okay. So the year 2000, brand new ISO 9001 standard. A year later, ISO published a standard that a lot of people aren't familiar with. It's called ISO 15161, Guidelines on the Application of ISO to the Food and Drink Industry. This was really exciting, but it really didn't contain any substantial information and was eventually a disappointment. And um, the industry just went on to wait to see what ISO would come out with next. And in 2005, ISO published the ISO 22000 um, food safety management systems requirements for any organization in the food chain. And this was what everybody had been waiting for. Very, very good standard. Um, Let me try to do something with the voice. Is that better? Trying to get the voice being better.
David, let me just make an announcement. I can hear David perfectly with headphones and without headphones. I can hear David perfectly. I can, and if I turn the volume up, I can hear very, very loud indeed. So, two things. If you've not got headphones in, turn your speakers up to the maximum. If you have got headphones, use them because the sound is louder anyway. So those two things, do those two things. And if that doesn't improve for you, then there's not a lot we can do. Okay.
Okay, I'm speaking as loud as I can without getting complaints from the neighbors. So we'll try to do that. Um, so ISO 22000 was a big success. Everybody loved it. Um, Great thing about it was that it was harmonized and compatible with 9001, clause by clause, article by article. Very easy to use, very streamlined, and great success. Um, so At that time, 15,161 became redundant. It was withdrawn, and it's not a valid standard anymore. And there's no need for it. And organizations throughout the food chain ask themselves, now that I have the ISO 22000, why do I need ISO 9001? Um, this is a really good question. And I'd like to go through some ISO 9001 requirements that 22000 does not have, and vice versa. So I'm just going to take you through table that has some of the requirements, not all of them, just to see. Okay, so there's comparison. So document management, same thing for both standards. Leadership, same thing. Resources and training, exactly the same. No differences there. I'd like to make a point. We were talking in one of my previous talks about food safety culture. Um, the resource and training clause of ISO 9001, both the previous version and the current version, and ISO 22000, um, they actually have a clause that talks about culture, not directly but indirectly, saying that one of the requirements of both standards is that the employees must be aware of their influence on food safety or the quality management system. And this awareness of employee influence reflects on culture, meaning that people, according to the writers of the standard, they believe that people, and I agree, people need to know why they're asked to do something, why they have to follow these requirements, and not just because they were told to. So it's actually part of the requirements. ISO 9001 has a bunch of customer processes that are not included in ISO 22000, um, namely customer complaints, what we call the contract survey, communication with customers, and is really an important part, which is one of the reasons why we do recommend doing both standards. Product development is not in 22000. Um, True, the standard does require HACCP to be performed for any changes, but it's nothing compared to the detailed requirements of the product development process described in ISO 9001, both versions of the standard. Purchasing is a whole part of ISO 9001 that is not part of ISO 22000, including choosing suppliers, um, um, having an assessment of suppliers, what we call a periodical assessment of suppliers, um, uh, checking incoming goods, specifications. All of this is not part of the ISO 22000 requirements and is required by ISO 9001. It is a very, very important part of a quality and food safety management system. Process control is part of ISO 22000. Only those controls that have something to do with food safety. ISO 9001 would include all of them. Um, and both food safety controls and also quality controls like weight, visual, um, texture, and so forth that are not necessarily safety issues. Interesting to say that if plants that do only ISO 9001 without a food safety management system um, will definitely be controlling their food safety as part of the ISO 9001 requirements. Um, and I'll be talking about that in a few minutes. Calibration, same thing for both standards. Risk assessment, ISO 9001, the previous version, um, does not require a risk assessment. And this is the big change of the new version. That's what I'm going to be talking about for most of our talk. Of course, ISO 22000 is all about risk assessment, the HACCP HACCP risk assessment. It's worth mentioning now that the other popular management systems that are compatible with ISO 9001, ISO 14001 for environmental care management, um, OSHAS 18001 for employee health and safety management systems, both include risk assessments. as a mandatory part of the standard, similar to what ISO 22000 requires for food safety. So in that group of management standards, ISO 9001 until today, until the new version of 2015, was the only standard in the family that did not require a documented risk assessment. That's pretty interesting. I'll be talking about why in a second. Emergency preparedness, same thing. 14,001, 18,001, and 22,000 all mention emergency preparedness as a part of the standard requirements. ISO 9001 does not. Both standards require traceability. Both standards require nonconformity management. Customer satisfaction is only a part of ISO 9001. It's not to gauge or to estimate your customer's level of satisfaction is not required in any other standard. Internal auditing, both standards. Data analysis, both standards, although owners of ISO 22000 will only be analyzing that data that pertains to food safety. Foreign bodies, customer complaints, microbiological deviations, and so forth. ISO 9001 will be analyzing all types of data. Corrective action is required by both standards. Corrective action meaning, please make sure you have this right, as opposed to correction. Corrective action is what we are required to do, what we are required to do in order to prevent recurrence. So corrective action means that when you have a deviation or a nonconformity, the organization is required to find out what the root causes are and to prevent a recurrence by eliminating the root causes. This is a requirement of all ISO management systems. And here comes the interesting part. Preventive action is an ISO 9001 requirement. It's in item, and I'm talking about ISO 9001 2000 or 2008, whatever. It is a mandatory requirement in item 8.5.3, not required by any other standard, only ISO 9001. Preventive action is a requirement that organizations identify potential nonconformity, and then find the root cause of that potential nonconformity and eliminate the root cause so that the nonconformity does not happen in the first place. Now, this is a very, very interesting requirement, and I'm going to be talking about it in more detail in a few minutes. Management review and continual improvement are built into all management standards, all ISO management standards. So people have asked themselves, as I said, that now that I have ISO 22000, why do I need 9001? Well, I hope I answered the question, because you want to manage all aspects of your quality system, not only those related to food safety. Now, I have been in working with quality and food safety management systems for over 20 years. And over the years, I've seen many, many organizations within the food chain who only have a quality management system. They didn't have a food safety management system. And the food safety was managed as part of any other, as part of the quality. That makes sense. So let's say I have a bakery, don't have a food safety management system, don't have HACCP, BRC, I don't have anything. I just have ISO 9001. Well, 90% of the requirements of a food safety management system are there. Because I need document control, I have to do internal audits, I have to look at customer satisfaction. Of course, quality of the product includes the safety of the product, but the need for a methodological risk assessment is not there. That's what food safety management systems have to offer. Which is why once ISO published 22000, and organizations like the BRC, the British Retail Consortium, published the British Retail Consortium Global Food Safety Standard, a lot of organizations say, well, I don't need ISO 9001 anymore because I have this other standard. But again, as I said, 9001 deals with issues that are beyond food safety. Now, to explain about the difference, the big difference between the new 9001 and the old 9001, I want to take a short poll and have you answer this question. Um, and if you are not, if you don't have ISO, then don't answer. If you do have ISO, I'd like to know how you feel about the requirement of preventive action that I mentioned before.
Okay, I have set the poll in the sidebar. How do you feel about ISO 9001 requirement 8.5.3 preventive action? Never heard of it. Fantastic. Use it all the time. Good idea, but unrealistic. Or never really understood it. And the votes are coming in. And I don't know if you can see that, David.
Yeah, I'm watching it. I'm watching it unfold.
Uh, Encouraging that 40% think it's fantastic and use it all the time. Around 25% good idea but unrealistic. 20% never really understood it. And interestingly, 16% never heard of it, even though it's part of the standard and they work to it.
Okay, so finish your
Okay.
voting. Finish your voting. Okay. Um, okay, I'm online, right? Can you see me?
Yeah, yeah, yep. PowerPoint's on, yeah.
Okay, I'm looking for my presentation. Where is it? I lost my presentation. There it is. Okay. Now, you would expect an ISO 9001 mandatory requirement um, that that's been around for so many years that 100% would say fantastic, use it all the time. And I'm not surprised that only 43% feel that way, and the other 57% are saying, um, I don't know, I've never heard of it, or I never really understood it, or it's a good idea, but it's not realistic. And that is crazy. I used to be a full-time auditor for a standard institution for ISO 9001. And when auditors perform an audit for ISO 9001, each one of the standard clauses receives a score, either conforming or non-conforming. Um, the one clause that receives non-conforming more than any other clause by far is preventive action, item 8.5.3. It always mystified us. What's going on? This is a clear requirement. It's written in the standard. The one right before it, 8.5.2, which is corrective action, is performed really, really well in most organizations. But something is wrong with preventive action. Something's not working. And we now understand what's going on there. And it's really, really interesting. Um, and we're going to, and it's part of the new version. I'm going to talk about it when I get to it. So in September 2015, ISO published a new and improved version of ISO 9001. And you were talking last week about the history of quality management systems. This is the last evolution of the quality management systems, and I have to share this with you. You have a little consultant saying you've got to implement a Six Sigma program, or else you're doomed. And the customer says, "Aren't you the same consultant that sold us the worthless TQM program a few years ago?" And the consultant's answer is, "I assure you that this program has a totally, totally different name. So when can we start?" Um, Consultants, we can laugh about ourselves a little. Um, get back to sharing. ISO 9001, 2015 version, I promise you, is not something with a totally different name. It is the next step in the evolution of quality management systems. Um, and It's not a revolution, uh, definitely not a revolution, but it is an evolution. It's a next step, and it's an interesting standard, especially for the food safety, for the food industry, with regard to how it can be used for food safety. Um, all certified organizations must make the transition before September 2018, so you have a lot of time. I do not recommend waiting till the last minute. If there are organizations out there that never had ISO 9001, this is a beautiful opportunity to get on board directly into the new standard. We probably will have about 10 years of quiet before it's revised again, because this was a major revision. So sadly, ISO 9001, the 2015, is not harmonized with 22,000 anymore. So I'll give you a few minutes to weep. Um, However, it will be in the beginning of 2017, so you can laugh again. So we're happy now. Beginning 2017, the technical committee for ISO 22000 promises us an upgrade. Part of that will include reharmonizing the standard with the new ISO 9001. When I say harmonization, I mostly mean meeting clause to clause, so it's easier to manage. So the documentation, the management review, the internal audits, employee training, and all of those goodies are all aligned with each other in the same clauses. So they can be managed parallel to each other. Um, so we're waiting for the new standard 2017. Wishing luck to the technical committee working on that revision. Um, so what's new in ISO 9001? First interesting news is clause 4.1, which is called organizational context. This is going to be one of the tougher concepts to implement because it's totally new. And actually, what the people writing the standard are trying to help us do is to put our organization in its real context. And this is instead of what we used to use as what we call the quality manual. So the quality manual is pretty much prefabricated um, for any organization. The context will be more personalized. And all the organization has to do is identify those issues that affect the organization, external and internal issues, regulation, competition, technologies, culture, and so forth. And the standard does itemize those. Um, for every one of the um, for every one of the issues identified within the context, the organization will then be asked to do a risk assessment. That's the exciting part. So the next interesting novelty is the whole clause where we must identify interested parties. And they have to be written down, documented, and their requirements or expectations have to be documented as well. This could take some time and effort, but eventually what the organization will be asked to do is to show how the requirements of interesting parties have been met. Interested parties are, of course, suppliers, customers, um, employees, shareholders, um, and any other um, stakeholder who is affected or affects the organization. And finally, not finally, but and but the climax of this is that there's no more preventive action. There's no more requirement for preventive action um, because the writers of the standard understand that it failed. Why it failed, I'm going to talk about in a minute. Instead of preventive action, there's a requirement to take action to address risks, which is the risk assessment, um, which is what ISO 22000, 18001, 14001 all require for each one of their agendas. Food safety risks, employee safety risks, environmental risks. So now we're going to add on that list quality risks, quality management risks. Um, and this is the most exciting part from my point of view is actions to address opportunities. We've never seen a requirement like that before in an international standard. Um, and I'm looking forward to see how it's going to play out in the industry and in the food chain because this has never been used before. And I think it's about time. It is actually the next step. The next big thing is how do we address our opportunities? And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Just want to show you the big change. Planning, item number 6. It's called planning. It's chapter 6. This is ISO 9001, version 2015. And chapter 6.1 is called actions to address risks and opportunities. And what it says is, when planning, this is a quote, when planning for the quality management system, the organization shall consider the issues referred to in 4.1. Remember those, the issues? That's the context. And the requirements referred to in 4.2. Remember those? The requirements are the interested parties, the stakeholders. and determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed in order to, and here's a list, A, give assurance that the quality management system can achieve its intended results. B, enhance desirable effects. Those are the opportunities. Prevent or reduce undesired effects. Those are the risks. And achieve improvement. Um, I think this is a beautiful way to put together a requirement and a standard. So I'm going to back up one so you can look at it again. So we're being required in part of our planning. And remember this is all based on the Deming cycle of continual improvement. We talked about that last week, I assume. Um, and planning is the beginning of the cycle. And what the organization must do is they must put together a risk assessment, a risk and opportunity assessment in order to address how we assure that we're achieving results, enhancing effects, preventing undesired effects, and improving. Um, the replacement of the requirement for preventive action with the requirement to form a documented risk assessment, this replacement of no more 8.5.3. From now on, we do risk assessments. Reflects an important realization. And this is what I've been hinting on from, from the beginning of my talk. Spontaneous pessimism contradicts human nature. And this is really interesting. What we were expected to do by doing a preventive action is spontaneous pessimism, meaning I'm supposed to be walking along, minding my business, all of a sudden I say, oh my God, what if this and this and this could happen? It would be terrible. We've got to do something to prevent that. And then run to my boss and say, I have a preventive measure, preventive action. We got to do something again. This is going to happen. And then most often will be answered, did something happen? Did anybody get killed? Was anybody, did we get any complaints? No, we haven't. Nothing happened, but it could. And then the answer would be, well, if it does, talk to me. And then we'll do preventive, and then we'll do a corrective action. Because we have to understand that the evolution of the human race, in order for humans to be able to progress, the brain cannot dwell on pessimism. So we tend naturally not to look at the worst case scenario, but we prefer to look at the better outcome. That's how we are. That's how people are. Most people. And asking people to just think of spontaneous ideas to prevent things doesn't work. That's why it is so difficult to implement that requirement. And I really like this quote. It reflects what the people who wrote ISO actually decided to do. This is Buckminster Fuller, the famous American architect and thinker, said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And we have now made, not we, but the writers of the standard have made preventive action as a requirement obsolete. I'm not saying that if somebody comes along with an idea, sees something that could go wrong, they should be shut up. I'm saying that it should be looked into, it should be taken care of, but it shouldn't be a standard requirement. It's asking too much. Methodological risk assessments have the ability to overcome our innate optimism, because what we are doing is forcing ourselves to sit down with a team, making a list, going over step by step, and asking what could go wrong. Not from our gut feeling, but from our thought processes, so that we don't have to, so we can go around our optimism and force ourselves to be pessimists just for the risk assessment. That is one of the great secrets of HACCP success. HACCP succeeded because that's exactly what it does. The hazard analysis, critical control points. We take the whole process, each one of the steps along the way, we write it down. That's what could go wrong. Anything that could go wrong is written down. And then we say, okay, now what is the likelihood of that happening? What is the severity? And so what is the significance of that specific hazard? What's its risk? And that's how we get our risk assessment. And then we have a risk number for every single identified potential hazard. And then we can decide what to control, what not to. We don't have to wait for something to happen. We don't have to wait for disaster. We don't have to base our management systems on corrective action. By basing a quality system or food safety management on corrective action, it means that something has to go wrong for you to get it right, and there's no sense in that. That's not what we want to happen. We want to be proactive. Um, by now, you might be asking yourself, well, when I have ISO 9001, the new standard 2000, well, I still need ISO 22000. David's telling us, whoa, you got yourself a risk assessment now that's mandated by ISO 9001. That's new. So do we still need ISO 22000? Well, good question. Please remember, even though ISO 9001 2015 does include a requirement to perform a documented risk analysis, it shouldn't be considered as a replacement. Um, and I would not go ahead and get rid of 22,000 because the new 9,001. Two major reasons for this. A, FSSC 22,000 is GFSI benchmark. It's here to stay. And I'm not saying that because they're one of our sponsors. It's just the way it is. FSSC, I want to remind everybody, FSSC 22,000, the Food Safety Standard Certification, is if you have 22,000 certified and you add that onto a 2002 prerequisite program technical specification, then you can get FSSC 22,000. It's GFSI benchmark, meaning that all the GFSI members are supposed to respect their oath of once certified, accepted everywhere. So if there are any buyers out there, please respect your oath. Okay, if somebody shows you a FSC 22,000 certificate, then you should respect that because once certified, accepted everywhere. And FSSC includes ISO 22,000, so you can't get rid of it if you are required to do that standard. That's a really reason. That's a reason alone enough alone. But also, please remember that ISO 9001, the new version, lacks the detailed guidance provided by 22,000's Chapter 7. Chapter 7, 22,000 is realization of safe products. That where we find how to perform a HACCP study from A to Z. Really, really well written. It's nothing near. I mean, ISO 9001 is nothing near the detail we get in ISO 22000 Chapter 7. So it's not a replacement. That's an important point. Now, maybe somebody says, so will my food safety and management system benefit from the transition to ISO 9001 new version? Well, I'm sure you guessed the answer. It's another good question. And the other answer is, you probably can guess what I'm going to say. Yes, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done this whole webinar. Now, for organizations that were never required to perform documented risk assessments, the risk assessment requirement is the big novelty. The big challenge associated with the new standard. These are all organizations all over the world. They're organizations that are all excited. All right, oh my God, a risk assessment, yay. For us people in the food industry, it's no big deal. A risk assessment we've been living with for years. So we're saying, oh my God, not another risk assessment. Because we're food people and we've been doing HACCP since the 1970s. So the novelty for us, in my opinion, is not the requirement to perform a risk assessment. It's the requirement for an opportunity assessment. Yeah, well, so now we're excited. We've never done that before. That's exciting. And I think this is, from what I've seen so far online with introductions, to the standard the new standard. Everybody's talking about it. A lot of focus is being put on the context of the organizational context. That's new, and everybody's talking about the interested parties, the stakeholders, and the risk assessment. Nobody's really talking about the opportunity assessment, which is really, in my opinion, the big news. For food safety specialists, we're trained and conditioned to identify and handle risk. We are the pessimists of the quality world. For us, it's natural to identify risk, but we're often short-sighted when it comes to identifying opportunity because we are so conditioned to look at what could go wrong and do risk assessments for food safety. Often we overlook opportunity when it's looking when we're looking at it when it's looking us in our face. And so now we're obliged. If we do ISO 9001, we are actually mandated to actively seek opportunities to make food even safer. Um, the standard does not tell us how we should be doing that or with what um, methodology we should be using. The standard's letting us figure it out by ourselves. They do give some guidance. One of the uh, uh, ideas that the standard writes and its interpretation for users is that to do this opportunity and a risk assessment, we can do a SWOT analysis. I want to remind people who aren't familiar with that term, SWOT is SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And organizations often do SWOT analysis, even if not all organ, not only food organizations. So that's one method that can be used to seek opportunities. We have to develop our opportunity seeking methods. I'm thinking since the standard has been published, it's been a few months already. I've been sort of thinking the best way for a food organization to seize this opportunity to become more optimistic and look at the how we can improve our food safety systems by opportunities that we can find. And I actually think we might be able to modify HACCP, the hazard analysis critical control points, by asking at each step of the way, not what could go wrong, but also what could be improved or what could go right, because we already have the method in place. It's interesting, uh, food for thought. Um, Nobody's actually documented this yet, but it will be emerging. So one of the things that we'll be doing in the future is adopting and adapting new technologies for reducing hazards and monitoring control measures. In my previous talk, end of last year in November, you can find that on the web. It's worth looking into because we talked there about the new technologies for monitoring OPRPs. Really interesting, high tech, advanced stuff going on now in the food industry. These are some of the opportunities that we're going to be seizing as part of our opportunity analysis. Uh, what we can do, what is out there for us to use to do better. Um, some really exciting new technologies. Um, and better integration of food safety into the new product development processes, designing safer food in the first place. I think that ISO 22000 lacks um, in its um, reference to new product development. Many organizations in the food chain um, are um, develop new products. Most new product development in the food industry is sort of line extension, more of the same, another flavor, another topping. But there is also a lot of innovation out there. A lot of new foods are emerging, novel foods that we haven't seen before. And we must use our risk assessment um, and our opportunity assessment to be able to design safer food from the beginning. And finally, food safety innovation, new ways to manage food safety that haven't been seen before. Once we start thinking about opportunity, we're thinking about better ways to monitor hazards, better ways to do allergen monitoring, better ways to do employee behavior modification, just innovative stuff for food safety that will come out of thinking about future opportunities. Um, so that was my short um, overview of what ISO 9001 2015 has for the food industry to offer. And we have a few minutes for questions.
Yep, great. Thank you, David. Can you hear me, David?
Perfectly.
Good. Right. Lots of comments. Once we've got over, I think we got over the sound problems early on. Lots of comments, questions, and lots of food for thought. Yeah, optimistic food safety and quality managers rather than pessimistic. Opportunities. Sounds great. And while you're doing that, looking for opportunities, you are taking preventative measures, aren't you?
Yes, we're not replacing risk assessment with opportunity assessment. It's just to do them both simultaneously and not just focus on what can go wrong, but focus on what can be done better, what we haven't done before, which is a new way of thought. It's just not in our regular thought processes.
Yeah. And I mean, Carolina said, so how do we do that? I mean, could you give an example of something, just one example of how that might look, a specific example?
One of the one of the methods that I've had the opportunity to participate in many times is SWOT analysis, a SWOT assessment, where an organization actually sits down with the management, takes time, and goes over their strengths, weaknesses, um, opportunities, and threats. And if we look at the opportunities quarter of that analysis, and we decide to do a SWOT assessment on food safety, then we will see a lot of opportunities coming up that we haven't thought of before. Um, just for instance, um, can we leverage our food safety management system to the public? People often aren't aware of how much we put into food safety. People just assume their food is safe because it should be and don't appreciate how much effort and thought is being put into it. That's an opportunity um, to have people share our food safety efforts by telling them more, maybe putting messages on the package, maybe having a more open discussion on food safety on our websites. This is something that's an opportunity that hasn't been fully realized by most organizations. Um, and some of the opportunities also saying, have we are we currently integrating the best available technology for training? We're doing more of the same because we know now that most of the food safety incidents that we're going to be coming across in the near future are going to be employee behavioral mistakes. The technology of food safety is already quite advanced. Control of pasteurization, control of cooking, control of our processes. But we have people walking around the plants who their education has not been complete as far as behavior, and we have not used all the best technology for this. We're not all using, um, for instance, food safety um, online training, and we haven't been using our smartphones as smart as we could be. Every employee and 75% of the population in the world has a smartphone, and they're using it all the time. Can we use that more for educating for food safety? Can we use it more for doing monitoring? That's another opportunity. So there are many opportunities out there that can be identified by methodology, using the methodology to go over um, the the opportunities.
Yeah. Okay, David. You can stop sharing your screen now. Then you'll be on webcam. As you can imagine, quality managers are attending and food safety managers, and they're already thinking how they can document this. If you're gathering it on a template or a tool of some kind, what would an opportunity assessment look like? As a document.
What it would look like exactly like a risk assessment. In other words, you would have your stage of the process, where you are in the process, the opportunities, write them out, and then write in the next column um, the it wouldn't be the severity like in a risk. It would be the opportunity level. What is the benefit? How high is the benefit? Low benefit, medium benefit, high benefit, super high benefit, maybe 4 or 5 levels. And what's the likelihood of realizing that opportunity? Likelihood would be from 1 to 4, 1 to 5, just like with a risk assessment. And then give that specific opportunity a score and say, okay, now we've identified 24 different opportunities, and we're going to start realizing or start putting our money into those that got the highest score, that are the most beneficial and the biggest chance of working. So that's how the method would work.
That's great as well. And when money's tight in a business, which it often is, it's a great way to get support from senior management for investment, isn't it? You to say, we've looked at all the possible opportunities and investments, and there's only so much money available. And here's the one that can deliver most benefit based on a rigorous assessment. It's a great idea.
Definitely.
Yeah. Let's see. What about companies that have got BRC, SQF, and IFS and standards like that, that not working within sort of the ISO FSSC umbrella, can do you believe that they can benefit from ISO 9001 2015?
Yes, I hope I'm not going to get into trouble by saying this, but I do not think that retail-driven standards or buyer-driven standards are an alternative to a management system. It's a completely different thing, in my opinion. BRC, IFS, SQF, and so forth. These are standards that are being dictated by the buyer. Buyer is saying, "This is what I want you to do. We have our 300 requirements. You must meet them all, and then you can sell to me." That's fine. That's respectable, and I respect that. I think that organization deserves to have its own quality system where it has its own uh, um, thought process. And that's what ISO 9001 and the ISO family is doing. It's a management system. It's not and it's not a dictated requirement. And it's built that way. For instance, if you look at ISO 22000 7.2, which is the prerequisite program, it's more or less empty, and it should be. It says you're an organization, identify your hazards, put in your prerequisite programs in place, and manage them and make sure they're valid. We're not going to tell you if the people should be wearing hairnet or a hat or should have their jewelry on or off or whatever. It's up to you to protect your brand. So I understand the organizations who are buying and protecting their own brands from their suppliers have these standards, and it's a good thing they have them. But they don't replace ISO 9001 or ISO 22000, in my opinion.
Okay. Er, let's have a look. Have a look. There are. Can you see any additional questions there, David, in the sidebar?
Um, why is IFSC not implemented around the world? The reason is because this is Ahmed asked that. I think that's a great question. Um, I think the buyers have to be more open-minded. The buyers have to respect the oath, the once certified accepted everywhere GFSI agreement, and little by little, more and more organizations will do FSSC 22000 because it's compatible with SQF, IFS. It's compatible with Global Gap. It's compatible with BRC IOP, with any all of the benchmark standards. It's a really great system, FSSC 22000, because it has the 5 parts. So I think the reason it's not popular around the world yet is it's new, and some of the buyers are reluctant. So they'll be saying, "Well, do whatever you want, but as long as you have BRC, then you can sell." And that's being a little closed-minded.
Yeah. It's because all the prescriptive, detailed requirements are not all there in one handy standard. I think it maybe takes some more thinking about, as you say.
Well, but FSSC 22000, which includes ISO 22002, does have those prescribed requirements. So for
Yeah.
those who need them, they're there. That's why they were benchmarked. Because before ISO tried to benchmark 22000 without the 20002, and it was rejected. And this was in 2006. The GFSI rejected it, and when they put in the 20002 and made the FSSC 22000 scheme, then it was accepted.
Yeah. Okay. Just a question: Is there? Do you think MedHat said? Do you think that the 2015 requires more documentation compared to 2008?
On the contrary, one of the things the standard is asking us to do is to use less documentation, or not less, but as needed. They've changed the term. It's not. They don't call it procedures and records anymore. They call it documents and records. They call it documented information that should be either maintained or retained according to need. And there are no mandatory procedures. If you decide which procedures you want to use in the new standard, um, I personally do not think that paper is bad. And when I say paper, I mean documents. It could be, of course, electronic. I think they're a good backbone for an organization. We shouldn't be afraid of it. It should be used as needed.
Okay. Maxine's asking, can you just please repeat the elements of the opportunity analysis?
Yes. Now I am making this up as I go along. Please bear with. This is not. This is from just from my experience. But we'll be looking at identifying an opportunity along a process, and then giving it a rank for its benefit. How beneficial is it? What is going to be the benefit from this opportunity if we do realize it? Probably from 1 to 5, 1 to 4, depending on the matrix, and that's benefit. And then of course, what is the likelihood of realization, um, which is parallel to a risk assessment. So how likely is this opportunity? Um, how likely is it going to be realized? And also on a rank of from 1 to 5, then each opportunity will be scored by a multiplication of its benefit and its likelihood of realization.
I can see, David, that there'd be a lot of interest in some sort of webinar or training course on opportunity assessment.
Yeah,
Definitely.
although I think most of the consultancy work is going to be moderating opportunity assessment teams, helping organizations put together a team and sitting with the team and doing moderation. So there's a lot of more hands-on, I think, than online. But of course, there'll be a lot of online interest as well.
Yeah, sure. Purdy's saying, is there a standard risk matrix that companies should use to develop their risk assessments?
Yes, there is. The ISO not 2000 and 9001 2015 quotes ISO guidance document. Um, I think it's 13,000. I'm not sure. I may be getting the number wrong. Maybe getting my numbers mixed around. Which is guidelines on how to do risk assessment that can be used. It's a guidance document. It's not for certification. It's for guidance. And there are a few other guidance documents out there. You can also adopt other risk assessments that exist, like FMEA. It's a failure mode effect analysis, which has been published. It's a 10 by 10 risk assessment. There are a few models that can be adopted without having to work that hard. Most consulting firms have already put together their models that have been tested. I know we have. We put together our risk assessment already and have tested it and validated it, and we began using it with our customers already. So it should be pretty smooth.
Okay. And just going back to the one particular tool that you mentioned before, SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, how would that be used in terms of the opportunity assessment?
It's mostly SWOT is a modification of the good old brainstorming. So brainstorming, it's an old methodology where everybody gets to say what they have to say, just from the top of their mind. You can't say no. You can't say we've done this before. We tried that before. You don't. So SWOT is a sort of a brainstorming with a method by saying, well, we're going to itemize it. What are our threats? What are things that can harm us? Uh, what and so forth. And when you get the opportunities, what are our opportunities? And then people, usually in a small team, will write down the opportunities, usually on a flip chart or on sticky notes. Just get all excited and then put that together and try to make some sense out of it.
Okay. All right, I think we're nearing the hour. Any more final questions? John's saying management buy-in is always an issue. What is the best way to address it apart from issuing non-conformances to management? Not always a good career move. That's a big ending question for you there, David.
Yeah, I think food safety specialists aren't the most popular people in the plant all the time because we're the ones who go around saying what goes wrong, what can go wrong, and what's going to happen, and it's scary, and we're always threatening everybody. Um, but I think that looking at opportunities is for us a way of saying that's not all we're about. We're not all about saying what can go wrong, but also what we can do better. Um, and it, the key to selling ideas to management is trying to put money to the idea, saying what it's going to cost and what we expect to make of it. So, for instance, if I see an opportunity to integrate a new technology that will lower our level of foreign body contamination complaints, well, we know how much that's costing us. We know what's costing our reputation. We know how much it's going to cost, and say, this is going to be good for us. It's going to be good for us within 3 years. We'll pay it back, and we'll make more money, and people will be safer, and we'll also be us. The food safety specialists will also be more appreciated, I believe, following the change. So that's an
Yeah.
optimistic ending
And there's lots of opportunities there to reduce waste and cost and downtime and rework and labour and all sorts of things. So I'm sure if you sit down with your team quite quickly, you can come up with quite a lot of opportunities. But gathering that all in sort of a tabular, scientific, measured approach, it really sounds great to me. Last question, this got to be the last one. Medhat, what percentage of total number of companies do you think will go to 2015 from 2008? Can you rub your crystal ball and have a look there?
I would imagine 98%, almost everybody. I don't think, I mean, unless an organization that's on the brink of leaving the standard, there are a few of those that everybody will transfer. It's not that traumatic. And I base what I'm saying on what happened between 1999 and 2000 with the transition. I was around when that happened, and everybody made it through.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much, David. Almost stuck to the time. Great presentation. You've enlightened us again and brought some new ideas and some new challenges. Fantastic. So thanks for your input today.
Thank you, and good night, everybody around the world. Have a great weekend.
Thanks. Cheers. Okay, ladies and gents, the final thing we need to do is I need to tell you that today has been recorded, and I'll be issuing an email to all registrants with the video recording, the slides, etc. Usually within a couple of hours you'll have that. So if you did have some audio problems, then maybe it will be better in the recording. What else have we got? The certificate has been loaded in the sidebar, so you should be able to click the button download now, and that will take you to a page on the right hand side there of that page. Click that and you'll be able to go to Dropbox and download your certificate. If you don't get that today, again, that will be in the follow-up email, so don't worry. The next Food Safety Fridays is about unannounced audits with Jennifer McIntyre. That's on the 8th of April, so a couple of weeks' time before that. Thanks for your attendance today. It's been a great webinar again from David Rosenblatt. Happy Friday to you. Have a great weekend. It's the best day of the week. Have a lovely weekend, and we'll see you all in a couple of weeks' time. Thank you. Bye.